What's up, everybody? Mark with Coffee&Toys here. Welcome again to another Friday comic book review day. And of course, that means today on the channel, we will be reviewing issue number 1 of Destro, the limited series from Skybound Entertainment, Image Comics. And yeah, this is going to be a fun one day, so let's get into it. But of course, before we get into all that, let's talk about the coffee you're drinking and the coffee I'm drinking. The coffee I'm drinking is, again, from coffee&Toys.com. I am drinking their subscription-based Roasters Club Blend of the Month, which is Tanzanian Peabody or something to that effect. It's really good. It's a mild roast, a blend that is fantastic. I highly recommend it, and I also highly recommend saving yourself some time. Go to coffee&Toys.com. Use that subscription-based service. Get 50% off your first month's order. That makes it $12.50 and then $25 every month after. Use the promo code Coffee&Toys to save yourself an additional 5% every time you make an order. But with that being said, we will be reviewing Destro issue number 1 today, so there will be spoilers. And if you're unfamiliar with the channel, my name's Mark. I'm with Coffee&Toys. I review toys, comics, anything from my childhood that I really liked, which is primarily G.I. Joe, Star Wars, wrestling, Masters of the Universe, things like that. Anything, because I'm an 80s kid. But today, on Fridays, we review the latest G.I. Joe comics that are out. And with that being said, let's jump into Destro issue 1. Okay, Destro issue number 1 came out this month, June 2024, and is written by Dan Watters, artist Andre Bresson, colorist Adriano Lucas, and letterer Russ Wooten. So we got primarily a new group working on this book as well. And let me tell you, this issue is fun, so let's just jump right into it. We start in the Republic of Darklonia, where we see the local rebels are rising up against the Prime Minister and his military. And they are at the front of the palace trying to get in. And the Prime Minister is telling one of his head officers, hey, go out there and take care of these rebels. If you have to pop a few of them in the stomach, do it. But that should pretty much quell this uprising very quickly. So the militia comes out, and they are greeted by a single battle android trooper. And as the bat begins unloading and trading fire with the rebels, with the militia, more bats drop from the sky, and they completely begin decimating the local military, which in turn prompts the Prime Minister to get a direct line open to him. And then we see Destro, and he says, the citizens of Darklonia accept your apology or your resignation. And with that, the Prime Minister has now become the ex-Prime Minister. With that being said, the local rebels are very happy. They say, storm the palace, let's kick this guy out. And suddenly the bat turns, faces the rebels, and begins unloading on and killing all the rebels as well. We cut back and we see Destro's walking through the palace with an unknown individual to his left and his Iron Grenadiers. He meets up with the ex-Prime Minister, who says, when did you become a rebel lover? And Destro replies, when I realized I could turn a profit. So we know Destro's motivations, again, being a weapons supplier. And he's talking to the ex-Prime Minister. He keeps calling him the ex-Prime Minister. And he says, my cousin Artyom Darklon will now become the new Prime Minister. The people will love him. He will lead a strong nation, unlike what you have done. And the ex-Prime Minister huffs and says, oh, he's just another bloody mercenary. And Destro reminds the ex-Prime Minister that the forces outside, they are ready to rip you apart, and I'm sure they can find many ways to make your life miserable. The ex-Prime Minister reaches into his desk, pulls out a pistol, puts it to his head, and says, I hope I see you in hell, Lord Destro. And Destro smiles, and we can only assume the worst. For the ex-Prime Minister, that is. We cut back and we now see Cobra Commander and Destro communicating from their respective locales. And Cobra Commander is clearly displeased with Destro using a battle android trooper because that battle android trooper could reveal Cobra before the commander is ready for Cobra to actually be revealed to the world. Destro argues that the battle android trooper needed to be field tested and that there are actually issues with its programming where basically anything with a face, it shoots. Has no prejudice, it'll just kill whatever's in front of it, and that needs to be corrected. Cobra Commander retorts, well then they're just useless and you are undermining my operation, and that makes Destro angry, and Destro says, listen, I'm in charge of Mars. This was my mission with Mars. This has nothing to do with you, and we are a team. We work together. And with that, he hangs up on Cobra Commander, and we end the scene with Cobra Commander just staring at a blank screen. Then, a little bit later, we return to the snowy Scottish Highlands, and Destro, in his full parka, is going up the mountainside, and he seems to come upon these ancient ruins. And as he makes his way up some steps, we see that he is surrounded by many ancient engravings or carvings of individuals, and we quickly find out that these are Destro's ancestors. He produces a small vial of energon and begins to talk to his ancestors, saying, I have never bent my knee to anyone, and I'd never planned to, but this person who calls himself Cobra Commander is the only person who has this energon, this energy, which is revolutionizing weaponry, and I will figure out a way to make it mine. And we get that brief little interaction there with Destro alone. Now, 3 weeks later, we do return to Darklonia. It's sunny, it's bright, and there is a beautiful young woman sunbathing by the pool. And we learn that this is Astoria Carlton Ritz. And she's sunbathing, and she's approached by her assistant who says, ma'am, your event that you need to be attending is in the next hour. And she just says, hey, I pay you to look cute. I don't need you telling me when these events are. I don't see what the big fuss is about. Once you've seen one arms fair, you've seen them all. Or I should say, once you see one illegal arms fair, you've seen them all. Later that evening, we return to this Artium Darklon, and he is welcoming his guests to the Security Innovation Defense Expo. In the background, we see many leaders from many nations, and including Ms. Carlton Ritz. As Destro's making his rounds, talking to the guests, they're thanking him for Mars putting on this event, and he's talking to all of them, and he meets up with Astoria and says, I don't think I've ever met you, and she says, you haven't. I'm the new CEO of Hybrid Technologies, and I'm sure I would have remembered you with that getup you have on. So I thought that was pretty funny. Another patron, meanwhile, looks at Destro and says, Destro, I've heard that you have now created an automated mechanical soldier of sorts. And Destro laughs and says, I don't know where you're hearing this. That's an unsubstantiated rumor. We don't have anything like that. Just then, Mercer comes by, pulls Destro aside and says, hey, we've done a sweep of the entire vector, and we don't see any vendors here that have Energon. And also, Extensive Enterprises is missing, which makes Destro wonder, that's very strange, they never miss these events. Speaking of Extensive Enterprises, we cut to Sierra Gordo in South America, and we see the Crimson Twins, Tomax and Zaymont, talking to a local military leader about evidently a massive botch has happened. The leader has his arm in a sling, and he is just going off on Tomax and Zaymont, saying, your troops did not help us. This went absolutely terrible. We have casualties. Your guys are supposed to be the best. You were supposed to give us the correct... And he's just going on and on about how Tomax and Zaymont did everything wrong. And Tomax and Zaymont, very... the opposite of this guy, very calm, very cool, say, hey, We at Extensive Enterprises, we provide consultation and assessments. We told you we expected there to be approximately 20% casualties, and from what the looks are, it looks like that is exactly what happened. And the leader, the military field commander, says, nope, that's not acceptable. We can't have that kind of losses. And Tomax and Zaymont push on and say, look, you're the one that has to lead them. You have to adapt. That's not our job. You are the leader. You need to make sure things go right, even when they're not or when it's unexpected. And furthermore, we actually diverted some of our Crimson Guardsmen to go intercept the enemy's supplier, and we ran this by the general. This causes the field commander to kind of tremble and say, you've spoken to the general? And they respond, we have, and he is very not pleased with what happened with this skirmish and you particularly. And we are going to call your troops and make sure that the best ones move forward and we don't have this issue again. As just then we see Crimson Guardsmen moving their way towards the medical tent. And the field commander says, that's just being medieval if you're going to do what I think you're going to do. And one of the twins pipes up and says, it's actually Roman, and that's where the original idea of culling the herd, so to speak, came from. And then we see the Crimson Guards just unload on this military tent, killing all the wounded, and the military leader just having to stand by and watch it happen. Tomax picks up his cell phone. He makes a call into the general and says, yes, we've taken care of everything. Oh yeah, we've also taken care of your field commander as well. And just then, Zaymont comes up with a ligature and begins strangling the field commander and thus killing him as well. And yeah, that was a pretty intense scene. Now we go back to the expo, and Destro, Scrap Iron, Mercer, and all the guests are standing around conversing when they see these drones flying overhead. And they're not Destro's, they're not Mars's drones. And then suddenly they begin dropping missiles just out of the sky, tons of missiles dropping. Destro's yelling for everyone to clear out. And while all the guests are clearing out, he deploys his Iron Grenadiers. They are up in the air taking out the drones, and everyone's cleared out except for Astoria. And she's just standing there dumbfounded, looking into the sky, watching these explosions, and she says, it's beautiful. And Destro just remarks, why must I be surrounded by fools? And he runs after her as a missile is coming directly at her, tackles her, gets her out of the way, and the missile makes impact. However, the missile does not explode. And so Destro gets up off the ground, looks at the missile, and says, it's a dud. And walks over to the missile, picks the missile up in his arms. He smiles, and the issue ends with him saying, it would appear that I am at war. And that's how the issue ends. So what are my thoughts on this issue? I enjoyed it. So let me get that out right now. I enjoyed it. I was a little bit spoiled, and I'm sure some of you were. If you'd followed a few weeks back with my reviews, they gave us a preview of Destro issue 1, and that pretty much plays out almost exactly the same in the beginning of this issue. So I already knew what like the first third of the issue was, but it's still great to see Cobra Commander and Destro interacting. I think was probably the highlight for me, because we're already seeing that these two are not going to get along. I mean, just like in the classic G.I. Joe comics, these two are always going to have their own best interest at heart and not care what happens to the other person. We're already seeing that right now. I had to look up also who Astoria Carlton Ritz was. I knew when I heard that name, I'm like, that's not a name someone just made up. That's a prominent character. Now, for those of you that are like me and weren't 100% sure who that was, she is from the Transformers universe. She is the CEO of Hybrid Technologies, and I can see how they're going to mix her more in with the Energon universe. So yeah, very interesting seeing where her character is going. She seems like she's just bat bleep crazy if she's just standing there watching bombs go off all around her. So that was very interesting. Destro going and talking to his ancestors, I thought was a really cool throwback. I thought that's a nice little character building right there. Dark Lawn, I called him as soon as the first picture I saw of him in the comic. And the reason I bet that's Dark Lawn, even though he doesn't look like Dark Lawn, he's not wearing the classic mask. I'm like, because he's wearing a green top and red pants. And I was right. And I was like, wow, they made him look like the figure, like the character also from the original comics. And I guess it just simply by his attire. So even without the mask. So I thought that was cool. Artyom. That name is I have never heard that name. I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but Artyom Darklon. There we go. No G.I. Joes in this issue. Nobody but strictly Mars people and Cobra Commander and Astoria, Carlton Ritz. So I thought that was interesting. We didn't get any G.I. Joe characters in this one. It does include, I didn't decide to review it because I've already reviewed Scarlet issue number 1, but the end of the comic does have the first few panels of Scarlet number 1. But if you guys are interested in that, you can check out that review as well. I guess I should show you some of the covers that came out for Destro number 1. Now I do have, this was my reading copy. So this is the fun one. I think this is one most people really enjoy. They just like him sitting on this throne of I believe it's bats. Yeah. And with the gold AK, and this is just very Destro-ish. So this was my reading copy, but I also managed to get a few incentive covers. So let's just go through them. I do not know. Some of these were more... This was one that I thought was an incentive cover, and it actually wasn't. It's just a black and white cover that shows Megatron. I believe that's the Hardmaster. We've got what looks like to be Storm Shadow, Scrap Iron, Destro, Cobra Commander, a whole bunch of people. I really like this one, and it's just a regular cover. It wasn't an incentive cover, so it was just cover price. Here is, let's see, which ones we got. Here is another cover, a non-incentive cover. This is Cobra Commander and Destro together. I like this one as well. And let's see, what else do we have here? I was actually lucky to get quite a few incentive covers. This is the 1 in 10 cover of Destro standing with his Iron Grenadiers in the foreground. This one's a very cool one as well. I do like this. And then that was the 1 in 10. And then finally, I was able to get the 1 in 50 edition. Hero Headquarters, shout out to Hero Headquarters, held this one back for me so I could have the 1 in 50 to show you guys. This is a really fun cover. I like how it's broken into panels. I like the Cobra logo down the side. And of course, I like seeing Destro. So this was the 1 in 50 edition. So yeah, with that being said, what did you guys think of Destro number 1? Have you been to your local comic book shop? Support local business. Support Image Comics, Skybound Entertainment, and pick up Destro number 1, because I know I love reading these miniseries, these limited series, and I want the Energon universe to continue to succeed, and I cannot wait for issue 2, because Destro's a smart man, and he is going to make sure that it's all about him and that nobody gets in his way. And I'm sure we're going to find out probably in issue 2 who led that bombing run. Was it Cobra? Was it G.I. Joe? Was it another third party? Was it, who knows? Because we don't ever find out. So I think that's going to be the big issue going into issue number 2, which comes out next month. So with that being said, that wraps up today's review of Destro number 1. Drop me a comment. Make sure you like this video if you haven't already. It really helps out the channel. And yeah, until next time, I'm Mark. You've been watching Coffee with Toys, and I'll see you later. Let's go.